In this video, I will go through the job interview tips that I have when it comes to field networks. The word field networks is just a preferred term that I use because of how I was taught, but some people refer to this topic as field bus networks. Something to look out for in a job interview. They may refer to this topic using another term. Before I go on, I just want to mention that I am not really an expert in this particular field. My knowledge is general and it goes as far as setting up and troubleshooting field networks, but I do know the type of interview questions that are asked and the things that you should know from a training perspective. So the first thing that you should know is or are the common types of field networks, which are Profibus or Profinet. Profibus or Profinet field networks are common in Siemens PLCs and control systems. So if you work in a plant or interviewing for a plant that has Siemens control systems, you will definitely find Profibus or Profinet. Most often, you can identify a Profibus network by a purple serial cable with a DB9 connector that looks like this. Profinet usually has a green Ethernet cable with an RJ45 connector. I am not saying that this will always be the case, but ever since I have seen Siemens control systems, this has been the configuration and color coding. The third and fourth types are Modbus and Modbus TCP. These protocols are common in Schneider Electric PLCs. Modbus uses a serial cable with a DB9 connector, and Modbus TCP is Ethernet based and it uses an Ethernet cable with an RJ45 connector. The fifth technology or protocol of field networks is ASI, or commonly referred to as ASI, which stands for Actuator Sensor Interface. Basically, what happens with ASI is that you have instruments or sensors and actuators that are connected to an ASI master, and this ASI master is connected to the PLC. There are different companies that supply ASI masters, sensors and actuators, but I have mostly worked with IFM equipment, which is really good and robust, and the support is good as well. The last one that I know of and usually comes up in interview questions is IO-Link, which is relatively new. I have recently been introduced to it and I'm currently learning more about it. It is a protocol that is very futuristic based on the fact that most factories want to collect as much information from sensors and actuators and react very fast to problems and rectify them. So this protocol will definitely come up in a job interview. The second thing that you need to know about field networks is their principle of operation and infrastructure. This plays a huge role in selecting field networks that you will use for your plant, and interviewers love this question. The first point is knowing if the field network modules use a master-slave relationship or a provider-consumer relationship. If a field network uses a master-slave setup, it will have a master that controls the I/O modules on the network, and only the master will communicate with the PLC on the behalf of the slaves. Shame. When the master fails, the whole network goes down and you do not have access to the data that is on that field network. Some setups adopt a provider-consumer configuration where the field network modules do not need a master and they can communicate directly with the PLC. The PLC manages the network and the data transfer between itself and the field network modules. Knowing if the field network uses Ethernet or serial is very important. In terms of implementation and troubleshooting, serial is outdated in my opinion. It is slow, difficult to set up and problem solve. Ethernet, on the other hand, is much better than serial. It offers more troubleshooting ways and it is very easy to implement and set up. Then another thing that you should know is topology. Topology is a way that you can connect or arrange the devices on the network. The most common topologies are linear connection, there are star topologies, multi-branch, and ring topologies. What is important to know and what interviewers look for is understanding that different topologies offer different advantages, like having redundancy and reducing points of failures. Also keeping in mind that not all field network technologies support all topologies, and having complex topologies can be difficult to manage. The number of devices allowed on a field network is important to know. If you have a lot of I/O, you need to invest in a technology that allows for a larger number of devices. The classic question that usually gets asked here is, how many devices can you have on a Profibus network or on an ASI network? Then they can ask you, what can you do to increase the number of devices on a particular network? Then you can mention things like repeaters or network switches. Remember that for every buzzword that you use, they will ask you what it means. So know your stuff. Then the next thing that you should know are the advantages and disadvantages. But this is not about listing. You need to be able to compare different technologies and mention which technology you prefer or would implement. The points that you can look at here can be ease of installation, cost, maintenance, troubleshooting, and support. For instance, I always go for technologies based on Ethernet rather than serial because they are easy to set up and troubleshoot. There are more reasons, but these are my top two.